What is the real risk of food allergens becoming airborne on an airplane?
Dr. Tanya Elliott here, board certified allergist. So let's break down the risk of food allergies when you're traveling on an airplane. There are three main ways that you can develop a reaction to a food. The first is actually eating and ingesting the food, and that's obviously the largest risk for anaphylactic shock or a food allergic reaction. The second is coming into physical contact with the food. So let's say you touch a surface that contains the food protein on it, and then you touch your face. And then the third is airborne, meaning that the food allergen is suspended in the air and then you breathe that in. The biggest risk, obviously, on an airplane is if you ingest a food that contains an allergen. So more often than not, if somebody's having a reaction on an airplane, it's because they accidentally ate something that contained a food allergen and they didn't realize it. And so that's where human error comes into play. And again, that's the biggest risk. Now, as it relates to something coming into contact with your skin, that is the second highest risk. That means that maybe somebody who was on a flight before you had something that you were allergic to on your surface. So my recommendation is don't ever touch the magazines or anything that's in the seat cover in front of you, and make sure that you wipe down the surface with a sanitizing wipe. You also want to wipe down your seats to avoid or prevent coming into contact with something and then touching your face. The third is if the food protein becomes airborne. This is the biggest concern with fish or shellfish. So if somebody is taking a hot food out and there is steam and they are lifting a cover and you happen to be there and you breathe that in, there is risk of a food allergic reaction. With things like peanuts and tree nuts, you really have to have significant amounts of food protein suspended in the air. You really need to be in a place that's boiling the peanuts or tree nuts and really be in very close proximity to the food protein allergen. The good news about airplanes is the air is incredibly filtered. That's also why we didn't see an increased risk of COVID when people were on airplanes, because there's high efficiency filters going like crazy. That air is incredibly filtered. Otherwise, think about it. Viral particles are way more likely to be suspended in the air, and not everybody gets sick every single time they go on an airplane. We wouldn't be able to control infectious diseases if that were the case. So the good news is there's a very high air filtration rate on airplanes.